Hi, this is Reapso Video, and I'm Theodore Ross, Editor-in-Chief of the Food and Environment Reporting Network, or FERN. I'm here in Brooklyn today at FERN HQ, also known as my daughter's bedroom. My guest today is Morgan Springer. She's a reporter and producer for Points North, a podcast about the land, water, and people of the Great Lakes region. Hi, Morgan. Welcome to Reapso.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, Morgan, your podcast episode on Reapso takes us into the life of Nic and Sara Theisen, and they're the owners of a small farm and retail store in northern Michigan. What's interesting to me about the Theisens is, well, how ambivalent they are about farming. Nic even calls it at one point a labor of absolute disgust, which is quite a phrase. But at the same time, they have so much love for the way of life that they've chosen. So, Morgan, tell me, why this story?
Yeah, it was not originally for the reasons that you just kind of outlined. Originally, it just started with the statistic. The number of farms in the US are continuing to decline. At its peak in the 1930s, 7 million farms. Now we have less than 2 million. And so I just thought, okay, I'm going to tell this kind of business story that focuses on one farm and shows what's happening in the context of this decline. Which, that's in the background of the story in the end, but this is really an example of the tape leading. So when I interviewed Nic, you mentioned it. I was just totally captivated by his personal internal struggle. And he just has this really complicated relationship with farming where he'll be like, I despise it. I love it. I want to quit. I can't imagine not doing it anymore. And that felt very rare to me. Like often you interview somebody and they'll share their emotions, but they'll kind of pick a lane. This is how I feel, and they'll stick with it. And they won't express doubt, especially if it would hurt their cause. And Nic's not like that. For example, I asked him, are small farms important and why should we care that the number is declining? And he's like, much longer than this, but he says, yeah, I think they're important, but I'm not really sure. And so I wanted listeners to hear that and kind of wrestle with those questions themselves. Like, oh, are they important? We're still being fed in certain communities. And like, what is a small farm to a community? What does it mean to the health? So I knew I had to lean into that tension more and just like let go of it being this like kind of straightforward business story and have it be about the work and what it's like when something's really, really hard and you're not really sure you feel like doing it, but you also love it and you're not really sure you're going to make ends meet doing it.
Well, I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
So tell me, what was the biggest obstacle to your reporting this story?
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a pretty straightforward story because it's really focused on Nic Theisen. He does own the farm with his wife, but I interviewed him and I focused on him and his experience of wrestling with his work. And really the hardest part came in that moment that I just described, like after I got my tape, after I did the reporting and realizing that based on my tape, the best story wasn't the one I'd really set out to do.
Okay. And now that the podcast is out, what do you think the takeaway should be for people?
I think that I knew this as a person before doing this story, but I feel it much more viscerally hearing Nic. And that is that farming is really, really hard and it takes a lot of skill to be successful. Yeah. And Nic talks about this in the episode. He firmly believes that being a farmer takes as much skill as being a doctor. He has more than 20 years of experience, but he's not compensated for his work anywhere near what a doctor is. And he faces risks often associated with weather that can be huge. But he's juggling soil science and design and the intersection of those two things and like disease and pest control and all these really complicated things that are constantly evolving. It's really hard.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And for those of you out in streaming land, if you want to listen to Morgan's episode, and you definitely should, it's really, really good. It's available at Reapso or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. I recommend getting it at Interlochen Public Radio. This episode comes to Reapso courtesy of them, and we're truly grateful for them making it available to us. That's it for now, but if you want to learn more about Fern's dispatches from the front lines of food, farming, and the environment, or if you want to support our work, go to www.thefern.org. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you next time.